Yes, thank you. Well, in the 5 minutes allocated to us, we're not going to be able to cover half of the topics that people have said we should cover. So I'll have to, as you said, be very short. The main thing I wanted to say is emphasize the positive. Things are moving. It's slow, it's frustratingly slow, but things are moving ahead. The response in 2010 was a hell of a lot better than the response in 2005. And the response in 2012 will be better than 2010. So let's look on the bright side. Things are moving ahead. The main thing to say is in 2005 we had a wake-up call. The ad hoc approach being taken to the Sahel was inappropriate and was wrong and was causing lives to be lost. We had to be more strategic. So from the very beginning we realized a mix of instruments were required. Humanitarian aid wouldn't fix the problem. It had to be linked to medium-term food security instruments and long-term development instruments. In 2006 we got together with our colleagues in the development side and wrote a roadmap for action in the Sahel. That showed what emergency aid would do in the short term, what food security instruments could do in the medium term, and what development could do in the long term, realizing that we had to be together. And the articulation of the aid instruments was going to be the key one. Now, the main emphasis was on proactivity rather than reactivity. We shouldn't have to wait for CNN to tell us there's a crisis in the Sahel. We should know about it long before CNN know about it. So the early warning systems, what was wrong? We commissioned quite a number of studies in 2006 and 2007 to try and understand what was going on. What are the dynamics, if we can put it like that, causing the crisis? And from that we developed a strategy called the Sahel Global Plan, and Peter's referred to it several times. That's built upon 3 pillars. Pillar 1 was improving the knowledge base. Do we really understand what was driving malnutrition in the Sahel? It's multi-sector, but what aspects of it could we deal with? The second pillar was funding a pilot innovative action that would demonstrate that it was possible to tackle malnutrition. We were shocked in 2005 to find there was a tolerance of high levels of acute malnutrition that would not be acceptable anywhere else in Africa or in the world. So we needed to break this feeling that the Sahel, well, it'll always be like that, children will die because the Sahel is a permanent crisis. The third pillar in our strategy is advocacy. We knew we had to bring the governments on board as well as the development partners. And we should never forget that Sahel is full of sovereign states. Unless we get those sovereign states to engage, to deal with nutrition, it won't really work. We needed them to get involved, so we focused a lot on the governments. And I have to say, there's been a lot of progress. I mean, we spent over 200 million on ecocide, on action in the Sahel over the past 4 or 5 years. Our development colleagues have 10 times more money. That's 2 billion euros available for the Sahel. So there's a capacity to do a lot. Now that we see that currently in the fact that most of the Sahel states have joined the Scaling Up Nutrition Initiative that's been sponsored by the UN. And recently, about a week ago in New York, most governments of the Sahel committed themselves to joining the SUN initiative, as it's called, Scaling Up Nutrition, and have been very active in that. That wouldn't have happened 5 years ago. To even talk about nutrition to most governments 5 years ago was impossible. Now we can talk to prime ministers, we can talk to presidents. The situation has moved ahead. The World Bank has done a major study into the economic cost of malnutrition. It costs 3% of GDP. So there's a need to get more investment in nutrition, and I think it's moving ahead. Now, because in the short time we have available to us, there's much more we could say. Just in terms of resilience, just for your information, 40% of ECHO's 1 billion euros per year is spent on resilience, 40. So we have a major commitment to it, and our development colleagues have an equally large commitment. It's not yet put into actual figures, but in terms of the European Development Fund, which is the main development instrument of the European Union, last week Commissioner Andreas Piebalgs at the press conference, where he committed, it's called the Agenda for Change, that the European Development Fund would focus on sustainable agriculture and clean energy. And I'm reading from his notes here, helping to provide safeguards against external shocks and turn the challenges of food security and climate change into opportunities for growth. Now, I could go on and maybe we leave it to the questions, but I'd like to pass to my colleague Jan Eijkenaar, who's been the guy on the ground. I'm the headquarters guy. He's the guy doing it in front line, and perhaps Jan will.
Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity to contribute, and thanks, Peter, for your report. We've been meeting several times, and also with colleagues. And with Colin and David and other colleagues, but especially with Colin, we've been doing a lot on in preparing for this. And we were sharing notes from August 2009 in this case. And we were sharing notes also with the NGOs. And without wanting to be too critical, we have been asking, and we continue to ask, if we're also going towards the response to perhaps next year's crisis, what is the level of strategic thinking in terms of our partners putting this on the ground, really in a regional way? And where were our partners in the response of 2010 themselves? Many of you behind this report. Not wanting to be overcritical, but this is something we really need. We need to be able to implement, we need to do it together with our national colleagues and the national service that we support to contribute to the response. Of course, nutrition has been our entry point. Nutrition is also at the heart of your model, Change for Resilience. What has been a bit lacking in the report, unfortunately, is the health part. There is a huge health component to this, and it's not being stressed enough in comparison to the nutrition and the food security part in terms of what it takes to go into prevention. Today, we have hundreds of thousands of SAM kids in West Africa that are not getting treatment. 2010 saw 25% of all SAM kids treated in the world were treated in Niger, 330,000 kids. We need to be able to scale that up, and we need to be able to get into something which is feasible in terms of the prevention that those children do not exist. It is impossible for a normal health system to absorb those children, and those children should not be there in the first place. So what can we do, and what feasible plans put into action we can do beyond the plans that we are contributing to? What kind of effective action we can promote and propose so that we get into a prevention in which those severely acutely malnourished kids do not exist anymore in the coming years. That is the challenge. And we are now meeting with our colleagues in the Sahel here in Dakar. We went through a monitoring tour last week, and we are looking also at the situation again, where our ongoing program is going, and also if there should be a top-up, and how and who is going to be our partners to put it on the ground into 2012. So as much as we are into the need for funds, we need just as much the need of you, our partners, to actually put it on the ground, together with our national colleagues of the government services in those different countries. That is the challenge, and have we moved on from that? We still need strategic thinking regionally with different partners who can complement those three parts: nutrition, food security, and health, and get it on the ground in the best possible way. Thank you.